hours in the day are not created equal. I'm going to say it again. All hours of the day are not created equal. We are simply at our best during some points of the day. Our energy is high. We feel awake, alert, and on top of the world. And at other points, our energy dips and we drag and we struggle to keep our eyes open and trudge through our work day. And if you've ever felt that feeling, just put tired in the chat box and let me know, because I swear, like those afternoons when you're just sitting there trying to keep your eyes open and you're just done. Interestingly enough, Elon Musk has been quoted as saying that one needs to work between 80 and 100 hours each week in order to change the world. And while, yes, he is very successful, I find that there are some holes in that theory. So what he fails to consider in giving the recommendation that 80 to 100 hours, by the way, who here wants to work 80 to 100 hours a week? If you don't want to work 80 to 100 hours a week, just give me a big no thanks, no way. I think we're all on the same page there. We're here because we want to make the most of our time, not work 80 to 100 hours a week. So what he hard pass. Yeah. So what he fails to consider is the law of diminishing returns combined with the fluctuating energy levels that come with being human. We're human, not robots. Studies have shown that when people work more than 40 hours a week, your output actually starts to decline. And the more hours that you work after crossing 40, the less productive you actually are. So combine that with the fact that our productivity is affected by our energy levels. And instead of changing the world, 80 to 100 hours a week is more likely to land you in the hospital for burnout and exhaustion. So how do we use those 40 hours a week and our naturally fluctuating energy levels to our advantage? Well, exactly. There are only 168 hours a week. If you've ever read the book 168 Hours by Laura Vanderkam, highly recommend it. It is wonderful. So answering the question, how do we use those 40 hours a week? Well, it starts with harnessing your energy based on your biological prime time. And that is exactly what we'll do today. But first, let me properly introduce myself as your time management coach for the day, because if you haven't joined for an office hours yet, I would love to tell you a little bit about who I am and why I love time management so much. So I actually kicked off my career on click-clacking around in pencil skirts and high heels in the marble halls of Congress as a scheduler to a US congressman, which you could say I was managing one of the most hectic schedules in the entire country. Imagine being someone who seems to need to be everywhere at once, from meetings with constituents in DC to meetings with constituents back in the home district, from receptions and just fundraisers and events, not to mention votes and committee meetings, the entire reason why we're here. Sometimes it felt like I was spending my entire days just parked in front of an Outlook calendar, rearranging meetings. I really wish Clockwise would have been around so it could have helped me with that back in the day. But like I told you, I'm coming to you from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm a Louisiana girl. And for me, Louisiana food is second to none. And it turns out I couldn't get boiled crawfish and etouffee and gumbo whenever I wanted in DC. So I moved back home to Louisiana, where I started a 10-year career in the 24/7 world of crisis communications. You name it, oil spills, hurricanes, droughts, floods, nonprofit embezzlement schemes, plant explosions, just tornadoes, you name it. And I have probably escorted someone down a freight elevator and into a back alley in order to avoid TV cameras waiting outside. It was a 24/7 kind of role. And as you can imagine, that 24/7 lifestyle, I mean, chances are it probably felt like I was working 80 to 100-hour weeks sometimes. I knew that something had to change, something had to give. So I walked away from basically having no boundaries, having relationships that were crumbling, having health that was not in a good place, in search of something better. So I learned everything that I could about time management so that I could help others either avoid that burnout altogether or pull themselves out of it into a better place. And now, here as the head of community at Clockwise, I'm your time management coach. I'm here to help you make time for what matters, using all of the time management and productivity that is at our disposal. And so today, we're going to dive fully into how to harness your energy to plan a sustainable work week. And like I said, we're going to start with the 3 energy phases that we all experience in our day. Then we'll take a look at those 3 biological chronotypes, and you'll get to find out which of the 3 you are. And then finally, I'll share 3 ways that you can harness your energy to plan a more sustainable work week. Not a work week that's going to burn you out and break you down. So let's begin by talking about how most people spend their time as they move throughout the day. And you know what? I've been guilty of this from time to time. So if any of this resonates with you, just put the word guilty in the chat box and let me know. Far too often, we spend our time doing just the next thing on our list, whatever we've written down, just the next thing. Or we spend our time, let's just do the easiest thing. What's the easiest thing that I can do next? Or we do the most urgent thing. We spend our time moving from fire to fire, doing whatever is most urgent. But how should we be spending our time? Well, we should spend our time doing the most strategic thing. We should spend our time doing the most important thing. And we should spend our time doing the right thing at the right time. But how exactly do we match the right thing with the right time? When should we do our most important work? Well, the answer to that question is your biological prime time. This is where knowing your BPT, your biological prime time, comes in. And knowing your BPT can help you double your energy, seriously, double your focus, this is real, and work faster and more accurately because you're pairing the right work at the right time. But before we get out our calculators and start zeroing in on each of our biological prime times, you're going to have to wait just a little bit longer to find out. It helps to know that we all experience our energy in 3 distinct energy phases throughout the day. Now, if you knew about these 3 energy phases, put a 1 in the chat box and let me know. And if you've never heard of this, put a 2 in the chat box and let me know. I would love to know kind of where we are with this. Oh, this is fun. You're going to have so much fun with this, especially because when you know this, there's so much that you can do with this. So there are 3 different energy phases that we experience throughout the day: your peak, your trough, and your rebound. And each of these energy phases are experienced differently by each of the biological chronotypes. So let me tell you about each of the 3 energy phases. First, your peak. Probably pretty obvious that your peak is your highest natural energy point of the day. Let's suspend reality for a second and pretend like I don't drink coffee, which I do. We all, coffee, no coffee, have a natural energy ebb and flow throughout the day. Well, your peak energy hours are the hours in which you are naturally at your best. You just have natural high energy during that point. Your energy is high, your focus is laser, and you're able to just really dive in and get things done. Your peak hours, now this is important to remember, your peak hours are best for focused work. If you need to dive in and code, if you need to write, if you need to create a financial report, Your peak hours are the best time to do that. Doing analytical tasks that require a lot of thinking and synthesizing and decision making should be done during your peak hours. So we're all right. Like those peak hours, that is your game time. Your trough, on the flip side, this is your lowest natural energy point of the day. This is when you feel sluggish. This is when you have trouble focusing. This is when it's the easiest time for you to be distracted by anything and everything. Sometimes it feels like work takes twice as long because you're having to constantly shift your focus, and things just take longer during your trough. The best thing that you can do during your trough is mundane tasks. Seriously, putting stamps on envelopes, folding paper, anything that requires little to no brainwaves is the best thing to do during your trough hours. And you might be thinking, wait, I don't have anything mundane. Well, then, my friend, I'm going to recommend that you find time to take a break during your trough hours, because it's just our brains just don't work during that period. I mean, they work, but they don't work full throttle like they do during our peak time. And so the third energy phase that we experience during our day is called the rebound. So this is our second highest natural energy point during the day. It's not quite as high as the peak, but almost. It's really good. And so your rebound is a really great time for brainstorming, for creativity, for problem solving, because you've got just enough gas in the tank to get things done, but it's not that peak energy time that really should be devoted to your absolute most important work. Another cool thing about your rebound time is that because you have energy, but it's not the most energy, it means that your inhibitions are just a little bit lower. So you're more likely to come up with creative breakthroughs and add really interesting brainstorming ideas to the mix. So now that we know the three energy phases, and by the way, if you're like, whoa, that is like 3 energy phases, I am definitely going to take advantage of this. Put the word energy in the chat box and let me know, because when I learned about these 3 energy phases myself, it really enabled me to look at my day and how I plan my to-do list in a brand new way, right? I mean, once you recognize, oh, it's not just me, there's not something wrong with me, there's literally something called a trough, and it's why I can't add 2 + 2 right now. It really like helps you plan your day. So we're going to dive into the 3 biological chronotypes. And John, we're going to work on getting your calendar to let you. So there are 3 biological chronotypes: the lark, the owl, and the third bird. And we're going to calculate and see which chronotype we are. But before we do that, I want you to take your best guess. Which one do you think you are? Do you think you're an owl, a lark, or a third bird? And of course, we're going to dive into these in just a little bit more. And by the way, you can read more about this framework in the book When by Daniel Pink. When, the Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing. I absolutely love this book. It's full of like notes and Post-its, and like I have an entire tab devoted to learning all about the best way to take breaks. But okay, so I see we've got some larks and some owls, probably owl. Okay, so we're going to get down to the bottom of this though. So let's find out, which bird are you? And here's how we're going to do that. You might need to get out a scratch piece of paper. The name of the book is When, the Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing, and it's by Daniel Pink. I'm a huge fan of this. It's a fantastic read. So interesting. So grab a blank sheet of paper, and we're going to imagine that it's your day off. You don't have, if you're a parent, you can totally suspend reality for a second and pretend like your toddlers aren't going to wake you up at 6 a.m. like mine do. But we're just going to pretend that it's a day off. It's a free day. You get to do whatever you want to do. So what are we assessing this day off, imagining that let's imagine that we're well rested from the week. Again, suspending reality. I would say vacation, maybe pretend like you're on vacation. You've been on vacation for a few days now. So you've kind of gotten back to your natural rhythms. So if you get to make the rules and do whatever you want, about what time would you plan to go to sleep? So if I am left to my own devices and don't have work the next day and don't have to get up and make breakfast for my little ones the next morning, I typically want to go to bed at around 11:30. Like that's pretty normal for me. And then ask yourself, what time do you typically wake up when you can wake up whenever you want? Just when your body naturally wakes up and the sun shines through the windows and the birds sing like in a Disney movie. What time do you wake up? And then what's the midpoint between those two times? So if you choose to go to sleep at around 11:30 and you would wake up naturally at 7:30, what's the midpoint of those two times? And I would love to know in the chat box if you would like to share what your midpoint is. I would love to know what your midpoint is. So I'm using my example is right there. Mine is 3:30. Okay, yeah, okay. And if you have any questions with calculating it, let me know. Okay. Oh, and by the way, Autumn, a recommended reading list compiled from all these office hours. That is a fantastic idea. I actually have an idea written down on my idea Asana board about like a book club. So we'll see. Stay tuned because I think that would be super fun. Okay. So we've got our midpoints. I love that. I'm so excited to know that that would be exciting for you. All right, we've got our midpoints. Here's the results right here. So where does your midpoint fall between the lark, the third bird, and the owl? The lark, the third bird, and the owl. So my midpoint was 3:30. So that actually puts me at like the end of the lark phase. I typically think of myself as a little bit more of a third bird, but that puts me in the lark phase. So now that you know your midpoint, let me know in the chat. Are you a lark, a third bird, or an owl? Look at that. We've got some third birds. And you're wondering now, what on earth is a third bird? And I'll tell you what, this doesn't surprise me at all. A lark third bird cusp. I like that. I'm a lark winged third bird, if you know the Enneagram. So, okay. So we've got our birds now. Let's keep rolling. Let's keep rocking and rolling. So now I'm going to tell you, yeah, John, most of us are third birds forced to live as larks. So you hit the nail on the head right there. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about each of these three chronotypes, and then we'll dive into those strategies. So our larks are early to bed and early to rise. It's just their natural way of being. They don't really have to try. It just happens. Interestingly enough, most children are larks and more women than men are larks. One thing that's very interesting is that our biological chronotypes can actually shift throughout the course of our lives. Like I said, most young children are larks. Anyone with a 3-year-old that wakes them up at 6 a.m. knows exactly what I'm talking about, or maybe it's just me. And then as you get older, you then return to your lark ways. Many people over 60 are also larks. Also, interestingly enough, most larks have fall winter birthdays. Most larks have fall winter birthdays, which I think is fascinating. Larks obviously are at their best early in the mornings. Larks are at their best in the early morning, and they experience the day in this order. Larks have an early morning peak, they have an afternoon trough, and then they have a late afternoon rebound. So remember, larks peak, trough, rebound, with their peak being in the early morning, their low point being in the afternoon after lunch, and then finally their rebound in late afternoon. So owls. Let's talk about owls. Hooty hoo. Owls are shocking, late to bed and late to rise. Anyone who's an owl is absolutely do not wake me up early. Owls, late to bed, late to rise, not a surprise there. So interestingly enough, like I said, that your biological chronotype can shift over time. Most teenagers are owls, which probably doesn't come as a surprise to you. Most owls are men. I think that's the right way to say that. Or most men are owls. Most owls are men. One of those is correct, and I can't remember exactly which one, but there's a correlation. Yeah, and most owls have spring and summer birthdays, which is just so, I know, right? Nicole, I was like, wait, which one is it? But either way, there's a connection between owls and men. Most men are owls. That's probably it. Spring and summer birthdays, which is fascinating to me that there is this connection, this correlation between the time of year that you're born. Owl season, I love it. And as you can imagine, owls are best not in the afternoon, but in the early evening. Owls are best in the early evening. And I would love my owls to know that you are 20 to 25% of the population. So about 1/5 to 1/4 of people are owls. So you are actually very special owls. Not as many people are owls as they would think. So here's the interesting thing about how an owl experiences the day. You might remember that the lark experienced their day in the order of peak, trough, and rebound, but an owl experiences the day backwards, in reverse. So owls begin their day in rebound. Owls start their day in the mid-morning at that second highest level of energy for the day. So one thing that I really hope is that by sharing this, if you are a lark or a third bird and you are a manager of owls, that it will help you extend a bit of grace to your owl coworkers who are just not necessarily at their best in the mornings. They're doing pretty good. They're doing as good as they can be, but it's just biological that their natural high energy point is in the early evening. And yes, Autumn, that is a great observation. Both the lark and the owl have their trough in the afternoon. And that plays into something that we'll talk about in just a bit. But again, like I think this is really important for all of us to recognize, especially when it comes to working with our fellow owls, is that if you're a lark, it's assuming that everyone is just as ready to go as you are, bright and early. It's just biologically not the case. So now let's talk about our third birds, because I saw that we had a lot of third birds here today. And where are my third birds at, by the way? Let me know one more time. All right. Hello, third birds, third bird squad. I like to think that third birds are like flamingos, personally, flamingos or peacocks. But third birds are at their best early to mid morning. So I typically feel like owls are at their best at around that 9 to 10 a.m. sweet spot, but it's a little bit later than larks, but they definitely still have their peak in the morning. So third birds, congratulations. They are the most common type. About 60 to 80% of individuals are third birds that fall in that morning. Well, Danny, that might make you a distracted pigeon, I think. I'm just kidding. So a third bird experiences their day in the order of peak, trough, and rebound, just like the lark. But the difference between the lark and the third bird is that the lark experiences their peak time early morning, and the third bird experiences their peak time mid-morning. So it's kind of like a third bird has just a little bit later start than that lark, and they're able to have that rebound a little bit later in the evening. And do you see this? A third bird also has their trough in the afternoon. So everyone experiences a trough in the afternoon, whether you are a lark, a third bird, or a owl. What was that? What were the mid hours for a third bird again? I'm going to back up and show that. And by mid hours, were you looking for this? So this was the third bird range. If your midpoint falls between 4 a.m. and 5:59 a.m. Okay, I'm gonna hop back. Here we go. All right, this is the order of the third bird. And I've always said that the best time for meetings is this afternoon. Look at you. Look at you. We're about to talk about that. So here we go. We're going to talk about now those 3 strategies for harnessing your energy to plan a sustainable work week. And the first strategy is to schedule your focus time during your peak hours. Schedule your focus time during your peak hours, because your peak hours are when you are going to be firing on all cylinders. And when you pair your most important work that requires that deep focus with your high energy, you're able to absolutely blow your power, your focus out of the water. Danny, I got something for you for that. Get ready. But before we move on to that, I just want to show you that in your clockwise settings, you can actually choose what time of day you prefer to have your focus time. My preference is set to mornings. As a lark on the edge of being a third bird, I am definitely at my best in the morning. And so if you too are a lark or a third bird, I would highly recommend heading into clockwise settings and consider adjusting your focus time to morning if you're able to do that. So our second tip, oh, and I would love to know, just with put the word focus time in the chat. If you have your focus time set to like intersect with your peak hours. So if you are a lark, do you have your focus time set for the morning? Just let me know with the word focus time. Or if you are planning to go in and adjust it, let me know. Just put the word focus in the chat, because this really does have the opportunity to really shift the rhythm of your day when you align your focus time with your best hours. So I think that's great too, for a morning one, after an afternoon one. Okay, so here's the next strategy for harnessing your energy to plan a sustainable work week. And that's to take a break during your trough. That is to understand when you are at your lowest. And for all of us, it's the afternoon. We experience a natural energy dip in the afternoon. And so scheduling a break during that time frame is going to be ideal for resting your brain and replenishing your energy, so that if you're a lark or a third bird, you're able to head into that rebound or that peak. Head into that rebound feeling refreshed. And if you are an owl, you're able to head into your peak time during feeling refreshed. Oh, yeah. Okay, Autumn. Oh, that's a fun question. But then when should you meet? When your team has birds of all times and you're all on different time zones. So if I were a manager and that were the case with my team, what I would do is I would recommend that you determine, okay, Chelsea has her peak hours here and her rebound hours here. Jonathan has his peak hours here and his rebound hours here, and get an idea of when everyone's hours actually fall. And you can find, you can create almost like a core working hours time. But here's the thing. It's going to be impossible to honor everyone's peak hours all of the time. But if you find, for example, that you have one member of your team, and based on the way that your meetings are scheduled, she is consistently having her peak time interrupted by meetings, then find a way that you could adjust in order to give her a break, in order to find a way for her to get some of that time back. And I feel like it does require some coordination, and it does require everyone being willing to talk about when their best energy hours are. But through some problem solving and almost Tetris, you're able to identify, okay, Sheila never gets to focus during her peak hours. Which meetings can we adjust so that she gets some of that time back? Yeah, definitely. Because if you do identify one person who never gets to have that focus time during their peak time, that's a quality of life. That's a that really has the opportunity to change the game for that individual. And John said, would that trough break be a good time for a workout? That's actually a great idea. One really cool thing that you can do using Clockwise is you can create a recurring flexible meeting to take place during your trough hours. So you know how you can set your lunch preferences in Clockwise in your settings, and you're able to say that you want to have lunch between this time and this time. You can actually go into your calendar and you can create a meeting. You can call it Take a Break. John can call his afternoon workout. You can make it recurring every weekday, Monday to Friday, and you can click it to make it a flexible meeting. And then you can say, okay, to move within the day, and that you want it to take place between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. So let's say that that is your lowest part of the day, but you don't want to consistently have, the same exact break just in stone on your calendar every day. If you create this Take a Break flexible meeting, it will schedule it based on how your day shapes out, and it gives it the opportunity to move within that time frame. So this way, that you'll always have a break within that 2 to 4 hour window that allows you to replenish your energy, but it's got the flexibility. So that would be the second strategy, is to schedule a break during your trough and consider creating a recurring flexible meeting during your trough hours so that you always have that break time carved out. And then the last strategy is to schedule meetings during your rebound hours. If you're able to identify across your team when rebound hours are, scheduling meetings during rebound hours is a really great strategy because, as we said earlier, when you're in your rebound hours, you're at your best for creativity, for problem solving, and for brainstorming. And so that's when collaboration and meetings really have the opportunity to be at their best. So I know that as much as I'm sure that we would all love to not have any meetings in the afternoon when we're in that sluggish trough period, scheduling meetings kind of at the edge of that trough as you're heading into your rebound is a really great strategy to make the most of that creativity that is bubbling up as a result of being in your rebound. It's because when we're just a little bit tired and our inhibitions are lower, we're more likely to shout out crazy off the wall ideas that just might work. So I've got a bonus tip for you. And that is to beware 2:55 p.m. 2:55 p.m. Okay, here's 2:55 p.m. According to labor studies, 2:55 p.m. is the lowest energy point in the day for most workers. Seriously, they zeroed in on 2:55 p.m. And so I would encourage you to start thinking, to start noticing how you feel at 2:55 in the afternoon. Really, if you look over at your clock and you realize it's almost 2:55, do a quick assessment. How do I feel? Am I sluggish? Am I tired? How am I doing? Because this is known to be the lowest energy point for most workers. And when we know, when we're armed with this information, that 2:55 is the lowest energy point, it allows us to plan around that low energy point. So if you know that 2:55 you're at your lowest, go for a walk. If you know that 2:55 you're at your lowest, maybe you know you want to take a coffee break or get a full glass of water to reinvigorate you. Maybe you know that you want to take a power nap, set an alarm and take a quick power nap. But either way, beware of 2:55 p.m. And I would love to know if you're going to start being on the lookout for 2:55 p.m., put the word beware in the chat box and let me know. Because we got to watch out. Oh, Danny, you just scheduled your 30-minute afternoon break. I love that. Thank you so much. Like, that is so impressive. You have already taken the action. That is just awesome. I love it. And we're all going to beware 2:55 p.m. We're going to watch out for that. All right, so during our time so far, we have talked about the 3 energy phases: your peak, your trough, and your rebound. We all know our biological chronotype. Are we a lark? Are we a third bird or an owl? And I shared 3 strategies for a sustainable work week. Focus time during your peak hours. Plan a break, a flexible break during your trough, and try to schedule meetings during your rebound. And bonus tip, beware of 2:55. Now, I would love to open it up for questions about energy levels, planning your week. This is your chance to pick my brain about all things time management and productivity. So you can feel free to either pop those questions in the chat box, or I'll be watching the Q&A. And there actually was a question. There are loads of great info in the slides. Is it possible to share a link to the slide? That's right. I've never done that before, but I would be happy to do that. Whenever we send out a recap, I'll be sure to include that. Like, that would, I would be sure, I would be happy to do that. Okay. And Catherine, how long do these 3 phases last? Are they typically 2 hours, 3 hours, or 4 hours? Okay, so that's a really, really great question. And what I would recommend here is, it's going to be different for everyone. Of course, it's going to be different for everyone. And so one thing that you can do is just kind of, if you really wanted to figure it out, they recommend that you give up all caffeine for a few days and then keep like a diary of, I know I'm not going to do that either. I'm not going to give up caffeine to test drive my energy levels. But I'll tell you that if you really want to figure it out, give up caffeine for a few days and keep a journal of how you feel hour by hour. But I will tell you that if I remember correctly, like, let's say that you're a lark, your peak energy phase is going to be the early morning to afternoon. So let's say that if you're a lark, your peak hours are probably going to be from about, let's say, like 6:37, maybe 6:37 all the way up until about noon to 1. Your afternoon, that trough, is probably going to be somewhere around noon to 1 across like that 2:55 and ending probably at about 3 o'clock. And then your rebound is going to be probably from about 3:30 until the evening. And then everybody's tired in the evening. So, and then if you're a third bird, push that all back just a little bit. So your Peak is probably going to be starting at around 9 until probably 1 or 2. And then you've got that afternoon trough, which is probably going to be 1 or 2 until 3 or 4. And then a third bird is going to have their rebound in the late afternoon, early evening. And so then the owl, same thing. That rebound is probably going to be from about 9-ish until noon. Everybody is in a bad place from noon until about, let's say 3:30, and then they're going to have their peak probably around 4, 5, 6 is when they're going to be at their best. One of my good friends, Katie, actually, she is on fire at 5 p.m. That's when she gets her best work done, because that's just what her natural energy levels do. So Catherine and Martha, I hope that was helpful, if that answered both of your questions. Okay, how does the body's natural circadian rhythm impact our biological chronotype? I always hear we should work to wake up with the sun, and now I worry my sleep cycle is dictated externally when it should be more aligned. Okay, so that's a really great question. So our body's natural circadian rhythm is what influences our biological chronotype. We all have like the natural rhythms in our day based on, when the sleep hormone melatonin is released, and when we are ready to wake up, and when we're ready to end our day. One of the biggest things, as we all know, that impacts our circadian rhythm is caffeine and light. That really and truly, if we did not have access to all of this artificial light, we would continue to wake up with the sunrise, and naturally we would go to sleep. I believe it's about 2 hours after sunset is what naturally would happen. And so if it's one of those things where, now that we have artificial light, now that we have alarm clocks, and we have schedules and work schedules and places to be, we're kind of living around our circadian rhythm. And so, the best piece of advice I would give you there is to do your best to shut off blue light, and to give yourself a stopping point with your phone and with your devices in the evening, so that, even though we have artificial light, we're limiting that blue light, and therefore like replicating what it would be like if we were only living by the sun. So I know that probably sounds kind of crazy, but that would be my recommendation there, to try and stay more in tune with your circadian rhythm. Also, in the last office hours, I talked about having one of the 5 essential routines is a nighttime routine, which helps prepare yourself prepare yourself for a solid night's sleep. The average adult needs between 7 and 9 hours of sleep a night in order to function at their best. It's going to be different for everyone, but it's typically going to be between 7 and 9 hours. And so part of that nighttime ritual is signaling to your body that it's time to go to sleep. And so you can, have like that repeated ritual that is just a part of helping, navigate and ease into that sleep time. Danny said, combine this with Oro, you can see how many Pomodoros you can get through. Love that. Nicole said, I have super strategic meetings since I am in a customer facing role. So no meetings during trough time wouldn't suffice. That's what you're saying? So what would you recommend? Since I also need to synthesize the meeting and create materials to follow up, which requires thought as well. Should I make things during peak and focus during rebound? Actually, a really great idea. I think that's a very strategic way to look at it, especially because your most important work, like your primary function, is to be customer facing, right? So that really is your most important work. So when you pair your most important work, which is those customer meetings, and synthesizing and creating materials, that's you firing on all cylinders and being at your best. So absolutely, that is when it makes absolute sense to schedule your meetings during your peak time and your focus time during your rebound. That's awesome. Nicole, I wish you luck giving up caffeine for a few days. Let me know how that goes. Danny, that's a great tip. I tend to group all my follow-ups in one batch in my rebound time naturally. Yeah, because you still have peak energy and you're able to think through things. That's good. Okay, that's helpful. So customer meetings during peak hours. Any tips for when you have to be at a meeting during trough time? Whew, okay, Stacy, that's a great question. When you have to be in a meeting during trough time, my recommendation is to know yourself and know what helps you feel awake and energized. If you know that you have a meeting during trough time, can you schedule a 15-minute brisk walk outside before you go into this meeting so that your blood is pumping and you've gotten up and moved around a little bit? So that could be one strategic way to head into that meeting feeling feeling energized. Making sure that you have a glass of ice water. So ice water is a really awesome tool to use if you don't want to drink coffee, but an ice water is great. And then the last tip, I actually learned this back when I was attending a conference in high school, is that if you suck on a peppermint or a mint, it can help you stay awake and alert whenever you feel sleepy. So that's another sort of a productivity hack, is to grab a peppermint or a mint to kind of like suck on during the meeting, because the peppermint will keep you alert. Okay, let's see. Oh, here, one question through the Q&A is, how does focus hours, trough, and rebound work for remote workers due to the flexibility of remote working? So this is a really fantastic question, because we're all working together across different time zones during different times of day. Some of us are working split hours if we end our days early to take care of children and then go back to work in the evening. One thing that I've recommended in the past to companies who were entering the hybrid model and the remote model is to, get together on a team level. So in my case, it would be the marketing team, would be to get together on a team level and have that conversation. When are you at your best? So that everyone is able to share, when are you at your best? Are you getting focused time during your peak hours? And what's our current slate of meetings look like? This is when it could make sense for everyone to do a meeting audit, an individual meeting audit, and a department-wide meeting audit, because you may be able to identify that by adjusting this team meeting and this one-on-one, that you're able to allow certain members on your team to actually get focus time during the time that's best for them. So that's the thing about this remote work environment, is that we now have to collaborate with more intention than ever before. And it requires conversations that we've never had before. And so that would be my recommendation. That would be my encouragement, would be to have the conversation across your immediate team, the people that you meet with the most, understand when they work at their best, find out if they're getting that time to do their best work during their best hours, and then do a meeting audit to identify what can be shifted. And I hope that was helpful. Okay, let's see. All right. Oh, Danny, I love that you're going to adjust your availability in line with your peak and rebound times. That's awesome. Minty gum. Yes, spearmint gum. Do our biological patterns ever change? So that's a question from Martha that came through. Actually, yes, your biological chronotype can change as you age. Children are typically larks. They naturally rise earlier. And then once you hit your teenage years, you flip from being a lark to an owl. And that's because there's so much growth, I believe, happening during that time frame, that they need like more sleep, and their sleeping patterns shift and all the hormones change. And so they become owls. But then once you begin to hit your, I believe it's your mid 20s, is when you start to level out into whatever your truly natural biological chronotype is. So you might have been an owl when you were a teenager or in college, but then suddenly you shift and you become more of a lark during your late 20s, 30s, 40s. And then once we hit our 60s, we tend to trend back lark again and become early risers. So it does change over the course of your lifetime. Oh, Danny, I love that. Get everyone to write a user manual. I love that. Okay. All right. So I think that I have gotten all of the questions. It's 1:57. I want to make sure that we wrap up with just a couple action items. And the first action item, I would love for you to tweet your biggest takeaway or share your biggest takeaway on Facebook, tag Clockwise, use the hashtag Clockwise Office Hours. I would love to see what your biggest takeaway is. And then I would encourage you to take action on one thing you learned today. Gold star to Danny, who has already been implementing and taking action on what she's learned today. And question from Desiree: how should we think about the trough and lunchtime? Hey, if you're able to treat your lunchtime as part of your break, I think that's great. I think just like being aware and listening to your body and thinking about, the rhythm of your day, just so that you're able to show up as your best during those best times. And then last thing, I would love for you to register for the next Clockwise Office Hours. Our next Clockwise Office Hours. So this was a topic requested by a past attendee, and we're calling it How to Win Your Week in 30 Minutes or Less. So last office hours, I talked about the 5 essential routines. One of those routines is a weekly planning session. And there was so much interest around the weekly planning session. We're going to do a full office hours on how to win your week in 30 minutes or less with a weekly planning session. So we'll talk about the different components of a weekly planning session, when you should do your weekly planning session, how to stick to them if this sounds completely foreign and like something that you would never remember to do. I cannot underscore it enough. A weekly planning session is one of the most important things that you can do during the course of your week. And let's see if I can drop this in the chat box. That should take you to the office hours landing page so that you can register for Clockwise for office hours. And then in addition to that, heading over to that link, you'll be able to register on the thank you page that pops up whenever you leave today. And with that, I just want to thank you all again for joining me, for being here, for being such an amazing high energy group, and for asking great questions, for having great suggestions, for supporting each other in the chat. I mean, that's true community right there. It's when you start supporting each other and giving each other ideas. So keep that up. I will see you back in 2 weeks, same time, same place. And if you have any questions for me in the meantime, feel free to send me an email or reach out over social media. And I will see you on March 2nd. All right. Have a great day.